Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of Let's Talk Supercars. Of course, the OTR SuperSprint is this weekend, tomorrow in fact. So welcome to the Bend weekend preview. So before we get into what's to come on the weekend, let's go over some major news that have happened. And starting off with the biggest news to come in recent weeks, it is now finally officially been confirmed that Will Brown has signed a 3-year deal to replace Shane Van Gisbergen at Triple Eight next year. Now, he was released from his contract with Erebus last week, which very strongly hinted that an announcement would be made very soon, and now here we are. So everything's set in stone now, which also means that Shane Van Gisbergen is more well and truly moving to the US next year. Although he's yet to announce his plans in full for next year, from the sounds of it, he hopes to gain experience at numerous rounds in next year, whether it's in the Truck Series or Xfinity Series. He was talking about it on the Dale Earnhardt Jr.'s podcast about what he's hoping. He wants to get more experience, especially for ovals, before jumping into the Cup Series full time. So he might even just do it part-time next year, see how we go. But from the looks of it, though, he will be moving. Now, speaking of Shane Van Gisbergen, of course, he was at Indy last weekend, as well as Brody Kostecki. Gizzy had a decent weekend in both Cup Series and Truck Series. He stayed out of trouble for the majority of it and managed to finish 10th in the Cup Series and 19th in the Truck Series. Now, of course, the Truck Series was an oval. First time he raced around an oval. So basically, didn't expect too much. The whole weekend is about learning. And he drove pretty well. I think he went from 24th to 19th. So it's a bloody good effort. And obviously, he stayed out of trouble in the Cup Series to finish 10th, which is, he didn't win. But you're crazy to think he would have. Especially because the difference between Chicago and the Indy road course, everyone who races in the NASCAR has been to the Indy road course before, compared to Chicago being the first time everyone's there. So Shane was a bit on the back foot of that part, but he drove really well to stick it in 10th. Now Brody, he also drove quite well to finish 22nd after starting last, despite qualifying 11th, which was pretty bloody good, but unfortunately, he had a crash in quali, which means he had to start from the back of the pack. But good recovery for him. I think he stayed out of trouble for the race. So now that Will's move is now official and set in stone, the next question is, who is going to take his place at Erebus? Now, in my last episode, I hinted at potentially maybe seeing Percat or Reynolds, or maybe someone in Super 2. But recently, it's been well hinted that Jack LeBrock will in fact be at Erebus potentially next year. I'm going to be honest, not going to lie. His name never really came across my mind when it was announced that Will was leaving. But the more after I've had some time to properly think about it, it has sort of grown on me, and I can actually kind of see it working out quite well for both Erebus and Jack. Now, Jack's supercar career has sort of been mixed. Unfortunately, he just hasn't had much luck over the last few years. He's been sort of a backmarker. But this year, it's been a lot better for him. They've had some really good results, of course. He managed to secure Matt Stone Racing's first supercar win in Darwin. So he's definitely having a much better year this year. So I reckon probably with a decent car, he has the potential to do pretty well. And of course, Erebus have their best season to date this year. So I can see them doing pretty well. Now, we've got to remember as well, this isn't actually the first time he'll be with the team either, because Jack LeBrock previously raced for Erebus as a co-driver to Ash Walsh back in 2015, back in the Mercedes days. So, depending, I don't know how much of the team has changed, but the main group would still be there probably, I'd imagine. So it'll be very interesting to see how he would go if that isn't out, because it's yet to be announced if he is or not, but it's very highly speculated. But speaking of speculation, a lot of speculation has recently been going around where, well, if it is true, could have a major effect in Supercars' future. It's been speculated that the Shahins have either been looking into or have secured a deal to purchase Supercars. Now, if you don't know who the Shahins are, or you've been living under a rock, they own not only... Well, they're regarded as South Australia's richest family. They own OTR and everything around it. And they also own the Bend Motorsport Park and the Malala circuit. So, they know what they're doing. So that's who they are. Plus, they're racers themselves. So they race in most notably the Porsche series and GT series. Now, there is very little information regarding the topic of whether they have bought it or not, so really just I recommend to take this with a grain of salt. However, in saying that, if it was actually to happen, to be honest, I wouldn't have too much of an issue with it, because Supercars are in a lot of trouble at the moment, as we all know. And as I just mentioned, the Shahins are very heavily into their motorsport. And I reckon I trust them to do the right thing with it. Obviously, they love the sport, and I think if they do buy Supercars, it is in safe hands. I've been to the Bend Motorsport Park many times. I've even driven on it, and it's amazing. It's an amazing track. Not only the track is good, but the facilities is just incredible. As soon as you go into the Welcome Centre, which is the main hub of the circuit, you're welcomed with so many beautiful race cars, which is well looked after, and it's just, you feel the love of motorsport the moment you walk in. So I reckon they'll probably be... it'll be a good thing moving forward if this does end up being the case. Speaking of Supercars, though, and their troubles, they recently announced that the plans to upgrade the tyres for next season has been scrapped. So basically, the reasoning for this is, I'm pretty sure it's the deadline for the specification changes for next season is looming, and which I think... It's either not even a month. I think it's before the Sandown round or after. I can't really quite remember when the deadline is, but apparently, according to Speed Cafe, and I quote, plans to investigate bespoke tyres have been shelved until more pressing Gen 3 issues are resolved, end quote. And it's, to be honest, real disappointing to hear this. Is yes, Gen 3 has lots of problems, but tyre is a big issue as well. And for example, Gisbergen stated on the Dale Earnhardt Jr.'s podcast that I mentioned before that racing is pretty much boring as anything because the tyre life is just god awful. And I quote him here: "You're driving around at 30% trying to keep the tyres, and everybody is just following each other." End quote. Which obviously people don't actually want. They don't pay X amount of money. I'm talking about the fans here. You don't pay X amount of money just to go to a racetrack and watch one fast conga line doing parade laps for the whole entire weekend. All because they can stay on track longer. Drivers should be able to, they should be able to push for race wins. And yes, I love pit strategies and I love what it can do to a race. However, it doesn't mean I want to literally see them nurse the car from start to finish. Like Gizzy was saying, how you can only really put, as I mentioned earlier, you can only put 30% into the car, and that's as much as you could do. And these Gen 3 cars aren't very forgiving on the tyre wear. It's quite shocking, and it's a bit disappointing that they don't plan on dealing with it, at least for next season, because that kind of takes off the fun factor for drivers, especially if Gizzy was saying that how bad it is at the moment. There's just one of the examples, like you just can't do, like he said that qualifying is really, really good, and we have seen that, qualifying is amazing. You set that one lap, which is basically as long as the tyres can actually last. So yeah, it's disappointing, but it is what it is, I suppose. Not much I guess they can do. I do understand that the regulations or like the specification deadline is soon, but I feel like since Gen 3 has always been on the back foot, no matter what. It's one error after another, and it just keeps on backing up, and it's just a bit disappointing, really. But yeah, see what happens. But now let's just run through some less major news that have happened this week. So the start time for this year's Repco Bathurst 1000 has officially been locked in. The race will commence at 11:15 a.m. local time, which I believe was similar to last year from memory. I really do wish they went back to the days where they would have 10 a.m. starts and stuff like that. But I understand why, because they start at 11. It's each year the race gets faster and faster with these cars, but I don't know. I'm very intrigued to see how the Gen 3 car will go around the mountain, whether it'll be faster or slower. So who knows? We might have a later finish. See how we go. 888 have extended their partnership with Supercheap Auto, which has usually been a major backer for their wildcard entries, with Lowndes and Goddard being the behind the wheel this year. Now, I don't know if I don't know if they'll have another wild card next year or not. It's yet to be announced, but I reckon if they do, they will probably end up having Supercheap Auto back in once again. And speaking of contracts, a new Red Bull contract is yet to be confirmed, because as their current contract ends at the end of the season, their Ampol contract ends at the end of next year. But I'd say Red Bull probably either... I don't really see Red Bull leaving the team just because Gisbergen's leaving. I think Red Bull will probably stick around. I reckon they'll probably announce it in the background or something. Speaking of contracts and whatnot and names and stuff, the Bend Motorsport Park has now officially been renamed as the Shell V-Power Motorsport Park. This has come into effect after it was announced that a 10-year naming right deal was made between the Bend and Viva Energy, who own the Shell petrol stations that you may see around Australia. Now this isn't really shocking news, as it was announced. I can't remember. It was announced a while ago, but now today, or Wednesday, is actually when it was officially named as the Shell V-Power Motorsport Park. So I'm still going to call it the Bend, just for so we all know what we're talking about here, and it's just easier for my mouth. That's what she said. Oh my god. So you know what? Let's just get away from that. Lastly, some new liveries amongst the field this weekend has been revealed, with Mackie Jones rocking a green-black livery to promote the new Ninja Turtles movie, and Scotty Pye will be running a fluoro green and white car, with BP Ultimate being the major backer, which we have seen. The livery is very similar to the safety car, the BP Ultimate safety car, and the E-Series cars as well. So you definitely stand out on the TV. Speaking of TV, let's get into what to expect for this weekend at the Bend. So massive massive milestone for Supercars this weekend, as the Bend Motorsport Park, the Shell V-Power Motorsport Park, will be holding Supercars' 600th round, which is massive. So it's quite ironic how a very young circuit, which has only been in Supercars since 2018, is hosting such a big milestone for Supercars. So that's massive. It's going to be they're going to be using the international layout, which is a 4.9 kilometer circuit with 18 corners. Tyre wear is quite forgiving in the past, but with Gen 3 it's a bit unclear, so we'll see how we go. It will be a sprint weekend with 3 20-lap races, each with one compulsory pit stop, which, if you haven't seen my TikTok, I mentioned how the CPS window has now been moved from, let's say, lap 6, 7, or 5 to lap 3. So teams can pit as early as that, which can provide more opportunities for undercutting if they wish to do so. And soft compounds will be used this weekend, I'm pretty sure, as well. But speaking of the compulsory pit stop, it would be very interesting to see just the tyre life, because, like I said before, the Bend is a bit more forgiving on the tyres, but that was with the previous cars, so see how we go. So now we're just going to have a look at the schedule. Of course, the weekend goes from Friday to Sunday, although Supercars don't actually hit the track until Saturday. So practice 1 for Supercars will be at 9:50 local time and go for about half an hour. And then practice 2 will be at 11:40, another half-hour session. And then at 1:40, they will have their qualifying for race 20, which is actually going to be a 3-parter, which is scheduled for 50 minutes, which is going to be the Q1, Q2, Q3, similar to Formula 1, and like they normally do with sprint rounds. And then at 4:30, the day ends with Supercars' first race, which is race 20, which is scheduled for 20 laps. Sunday, 20th of August, 9:45, Supercars go out for qualifying for race 21 for 15 minutes, followed by qualifying for race 22 for another 15 minutes at 10:10. And then they go out for race 21 at 12:50, and then finish the day at 3:50 with race 22. Like I said, all going to be 20-lap races with a compulsory pit stop. And now let's have a quick look at the weather for the weekend. It's a bit of a gloomy weekend for Adelaide, at least, but for South Australia anyway. Friday, we're expecting some light rain, 14 degrees, but Supercars, like I mentioned, aren't going out that day. Saturday and Sunday are supposed to be at both 18 degrees and cloudy, so with 20-kilometre winds. So see how that goes, especially down the main straight. But it looks like it's going to be a little bit of a dark weekend, so that'll be very interesting. Let me know who you think is going to be on top at the end of this weekend, whether Erebus or Red Bull will finish on top this weekend. Now, despite Will Brown leaving the team at the end of this year and switching sides, they'll be still racing hard for the championship win, heading into the remainder of the season. So it's going to be very exciting to see how they all go. I'm excited. I do like Red Bull, but I would love to see Erebus win. That's what I'd love to see. Of course, this is a very important round because it's the last one before the Enduros, before we get into Sandown, which is also extremely important as well for the championship, which will make or break the championship for sure. Let me know if you're even going down to the track as well. Unfortunately, I won't be there this weekend, but I'll definitely be staying in the loop. And stay tuned for a debrief sometime next week. Now, also, I've now cheeky plug. If you want to check out my Instagram, I've got Daniel Leckel 35 and Let's Talk .motorsport. All the links will be in the description of this video or pod, wherever you're watching or listening. I've also got a TikTok now, same as Instagram, Let's Talk .motorsport, where I post either snippets from the pod or some minor news that I wouldn't make into a video. So stay tuned for that one. And so if you did enjoy this pod, feel free to hit a follow on Spotify. That would be fantastic. Or subscribe on YouTube and give it a like as well while you're at it. So that's all from me for now. Have a good weekend and stay tuned for the OTR SuperSprint debrief. Bye for now.